If you were to go to Buick's Build and Price website right now, you would notice there's not a single sedan for sale. Which is weird because Buick has always had sedans for sale, compact, midsize, full-size, for decades, and it really shows how much the market has changed. Buick in the 2010s, which isn't long ago at all, had some really cool cars, and I'm going to break them down for you for this week's video. I know my last video was a bit different, but I think it's important to try new things. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I really appreciate all the feedback that I received on that video. It helps me understand what's working and what's not. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a deep dive into Buick's diverse lineup that wasn't appreciated at the time. First up is the Buick Lucerne, Buick's flagship for a few years. The Lucerne was Buick's last link to the old school, full-size V8 powered American sedan, although they weren't rear-wheel drive. By 2010, it was already on its way out, but it still had that Cadillac-sourced 4.6-liter Northstar V8 in the top trim Super, good for 292 horsepower. By 2010, the Northstar was a much better engine, but by then the reputation was already in the toilet. One way to identify if it's a V6 or V8 is by the number of venti ports on the front fenders, 3 on each side for V6 and 4 for V8. Lower trims had a 3.9-liter V6, which was quieter but didn't feel particularly powerful. Inside, the Lucerne leaned hard into the classic Buick formula: cushy leather seats, wood grain trim, plenty of room, paired with a smooth four-wheel independent suspension system. Super trims got magnetic ride control, a technology lifted from Corvettes and Cadillacs which helped the ride stay composed. The Lucerne quietly left Buick's lineup in 2011, in my opinion pretty forgettable cars, but they were the last Buicks to have a V8. The LaCrosse replaced the Lucerne as the company's flagship, and they tried to be something totally different. The first generation of this new LaCrosse ran from 2010 to 2016 and rode on the Epsilon 2 platform shared with the Impala and XTS. Styling was fluid with swept-back headlights and a coupe-like roofline that made it look much sportier than it was. If you ask me, I don't find these cars too attractive. You know, I'm younger, if you couldn't tell, and so I'm sure my older audience likes the look of these. I think the Impala looked better. Engine options started with a 2.4-liter inline-4 and even a mild hybrid variant called e-Assist that added a small electric motor and battery to save gas. But most buyers went for the 3.6-liter V6, a 303 horsepower engine that had enough grunt for passing, especially with the updated 6-speed automatic. Inside, it was quiet and genuinely comfortable. Leather, heated and ventilated seats, and real wood trim were available. Buick threw in tech like heads-up display, navigation, and rear sunshades, giving it a near-premium feel. Then came the second gen in 2017, even more refined, lighter, sleeker, and paired to a new 8-speed automatic transmission. I hardly saw these when they were new, and nowadays they are pretty rare as they were only offered for 3 model years. I think these look absolutely gorgeous, over 300 horsepower, all the modern features you could ask for, just by then sedans were dying out. Launched in 2008 but continuing well into the 2010s, the first-gen Enclave was the luxury version of GM's full-size 3-row SUVs, sharing DNA with the Traverse and Acadia. Powered by a 3.6-liter V6 and offering both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, it wasn't sporty but it had space and presence. Buyers loved the quiet ride, premium feel, and ability to haul 7 people without looking like a minivan. It had real wood accents, second-row captain's chairs, power everything, and available adaptive HID headlights. In 2018, the second generation dropped. It was sleeker, lighter, and featured the new Avenir trim, Buick's answer to Denali and High Country trims. With the updated 3.6 LGX V6 and a 9-speed automatic, it drove smoother and offered more tech. The Regal name returned in 2011, but this time it was a rebadged Opel insignia from Germany, and it showed. Sharp styling, European proportions, and an available turbo engine made this a different kind of Buick. Base trims or CXLs got a 2.4 4-cylinder with 182 horsepower, but the real fun started with the Regal Turbo, a 2-liter turbocharged 4 with 220 horsepower. And then of course the best of the 3, the GS. The 2012 to 2016 Regal GS pushed 270 horsepower, had a lower ride height, Brembo front brakes, and the optional manual transmission. It was one of the best modern Buicks ever made, at least that's what I think. They just fell under most people's radars, and that's what makes them unique. Then in 2018, Buick switched things up again. The new Regal became the Sportback, a sleek liftback sedan, and then there's the Tour X. The GS returned, this time with a 3.6-liter V6 making 310 horsepower and all-wheel drive, but no more manual, which, whatever, this was such a cool car. The Tour X wagon was criminally overlooked, especially with standard all-wheel drive, a big cargo area, rugged cladding. It had been 35 years since a Regal wagon was last offered. Unfortunately, neither version sold well, and Buick axed them both in 2020 as they pulled out of the sedan market entirely. The Verano was a compact luxury sedan built on the cruise platform but refined with Buick levels of quiet and comfort. The base engine was a 2.4-liter making 180 horsepower, enough for daily driving but not too thrilling. Where things got interesting though was the Verano Turbo. In 2013, Buick dropped in the Regal's 2-liter turbo making 250 horsepower, and wait for it, gave it a manual option. It wasn't just fast for a Buick, it was fast for anything in its class. 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds. Inside, it was upscale, soft touch materials, Bose sound system, heated steering wheel, and remote start depending on the trim. It was genuinely quiet too. Buick added triple door seals in laminated glass to hush outside noise. Despite the performance potential, the Verano was still a hard sell for younger buyers, and by 2017 it was gone from the US, although it continued in China. Next is the Encore, and it was a little bit of a bold move from Buick. A tiny crossover with a tiny 1.4 turbo making just 138 horsepower riding on a stretched sonic platform, it didn't sound promising. Turns out, these sold like crazy, and buyers loved them. Compact size, upright seating position, and a quiet cabin made it perfect for people that don't know anything about cars. Alright, that was a little harsh, but for me, I've honestly despised this car since it came out. It did get a facelift in 2017 with updated headlights, a revised grille, and better infotainment system. Despite being slow and not all that exciting, the Encore was Buick's bestseller for years, so I guess give credit where credit is due. I would like to think this was subtle foreshadowing for what we see from Buick today with the variety of crossovers. The Cascada was Buick's random curveball, a two-door convertible coupe built by Opel in Poland, imported to the US, and sold as a Buick. It had a 1.6 turbo 4 pushing 200 horsepower paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission. It wasn't fast, it didn't handle like a Miata for example, but it was smooth, comfortable, and had just enough power to cruise. The power soft top could go up or down in 17 seconds while moving up to 30 miles per hour. Inside, it had navigation, leather, and heated seats even in the back. But it also used an outdated dashboard layout and bottom-heavy controls that felt 5 years behind the competition. While I was editing the audio, I remembered it's Buick we're talking about here, so the outdated interior makes sense. GM was playing it safe and having all of these buttons and not switching to a touchscreen that the competition had. Looking at a 2017 Miata and the Buick, yeah, it looks like I'd spend my money elsewhere, and I would, but I was never the intended audience. There were basically 3 trims: base, premium, and sport touring. All of them were more about looks than performance. The Cascada, and I've always thought it was Cascada, never sold in big numbers. Most people didn't even know it existed, but it was Buick's first convertible since the Regatta and probably the last for a while. I'm going to skip over the first generation Envision. It wasn't this sales hit, nor was it all that interesting. Your typical crossover from the mid-2010s, who really cares? And of course the second gen Envision is for sale as of 2025. And there you have it, every Buick from the 2010s, excluding the Envision. Buick tried a little of everything this decade. We saw a wagon, a convertible, a full-size luxury sedan, and some of it worked, and of course some of it didn't. If we look at their lineup in 2025, it's odd not even seeing one sedan offered, but that's how the market is right now, and who knows how long Buick will last for. As always, feel free to comment your opinions and stories. I tend to read every comment. Most YouTubers don't, and it's something I don't take for granted. With all that said, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will try and see you all next week.